Welcome to True Fraud. I'm your host, Pablo Torres, and today we're going to talk about the tariffs, everything that's going on with tariffs, and how they could impact the level of chargebacks and your chargeback ratio with your e-commerce business. Regardless of the decision from one country or another to stop shipping and like the to and from the States, talking specifically about the reaction from China, there's going to be a direct impact regardless if China decides to do that. And there's going to be a direct impact simply because of all the turmoil that this is causing, right? It's creating a lot of confusion, and it's kind of moving things around. And now that there's tariffs, it was sort of announced like tariffs for everyone, and that will definitely have a direct impact on your business. We're going to talk a little bit about how everything that's happening out there right now. Unfortunately, we can't say, or we can't talk about this is exactly what's going to happen, since, there's tariffs today and then there's none tomorrow. Everything is just kind of up in the air. And so we can't give a very concise idea of how things are going to be impacted. However, we have the concept, or we have the knowledge to be able to understand the snowball effect to any kind of these decisions and how they impact the market, right? Right now, China's reaction to stop shipping from and to the States, of course, there's going to be a direct impact to a lot of e-commerce, specifically talking about like drop shippers, for example. And then there's, of course, a lot of other businesses who decide to keep their warehouses in China. And then, of course, things are being manufactured there. And then the business, which, might be located somewhere in Malta or something like that, then all of those products that are being shipped from China into the States, then all of these businesses now are going to have to figure out a different route, I guess, for these products, right? This includes maybe adding a new 3PL, third-party logistics provider, or maybe setting up kind of like a new warehouse where they can hold some of these goods and then move them from there. Regardless of how they strategize to move their product and to be able to catch up with everything that's going on, it is important to note that now, given the situation and how there's tariffs that are constantly changing, then even if the product is not coming directly from China, there might be some other tariffs that are applied to the product. And so this is something that's, a little bit hard to navigate right now, and that will definitely impact your business. The other part of how, you could potentially leverage this is a great opportunity to kind of invest in some of the markets that you were never maybe too inclined to explore, right? So if the U.S. market suddenly is going to be kind of bogged by all of this stuff, and the products are going to start getting delayed in the deliveries, and they're going to be held at customs or something like that, then maybe this is a great opportunity to go and try and sell your products in Spain or in Australia, or maybe other markets that you have heard that are great opportunities and you never did because you didn't have to risk anything. And so now this is, instead of seeing it as a problem, maybe this is something that comes up as an opportunity for you and your business to grow. When you have an ever-changing environment and you don't know when orders are going to be delayed, then the communication that you have with your customers, with your buyers, should be clear enough so that maybe you ask them to practice a little bit of patience. I think everyone is very aware of everything that's happening in the planet. And it's not just the U.S. economy. I think every other economy is kind of trying to understand how do we navigate this. And so if things are going to start getting delayed and then you're not communicating to your customers, then that also means it translates into a wave of chargebacks for good services not received, right? If you're having manufacturers that are not willing to work with you because you're in the States, or, for whatever reason, maybe the things that your supplies that you use to put your product together is coming from China, then everything will get delayed. So it's not just the delivery of the goods, it's also the production of the goods, right? So you need to learn to strategize this and navigate this by maybe talking with different suppliers, talking with different logistics channels, talking with with your buyers, and communicate and be clear on the message with, we're learning how to navigate this. Recently, I saw on a few websites where, maybe we're talking about 2 weeks ago or something like that, where if your cart was of a certain amount or higher than a certain amount, they had set a threshold. They basically were saying, we can't process this because we don't know how to handle it. And so that's a very interesting approach. I think missing on sales is never the best strategy, but also they were not only protecting their customers, they're protecting themselves as a business, because that represents a risk that maybe at the time they're not willing to take, especially when it's something that's changing so much, and it's something that it just remains unclear as to when is this really going to come into effect, or when is this going to change. And it could be just in the next 2 hours or the next week, or, who knows, it could be in the next month. I think at some point all of this is going to settle, and then businesses, of course, are going to be able to learn how to handle this, right? Leo, who you probably have listened to in some of the other podcasts, he was referring to trying to educate the buyers with, this is how we're going to do things, and this is how we're going to charge for this. And, if the product is DDU, then that means, then you're including that into the price or not. So being able to understand that whole landscape and then translating it into your checkout flow, I think that's going to be of great benefit for your business. So like on the service provider or on the PSP side of things, thinking about the cart networks and the cart processing, and of course, if we're introducing the concept of the new chargeback ratio calculation under the new Visa Acquire Monitoring Program, we need to keep in mind that that's also been a little bit of a changing environment, and there's been a lot of fluctuation in how that ratio is going to be calculated. There's rumors, everyone is talking about somebody that heard something from Visa, or friends of friends or something like that, and you hear a lot of things in the industry where Visa is supposed to have kind of like the final say of how things are going to be handled in the new VAMP approach. Right now, things have changed several times, in the way that initially RDR was not going to be introduced in the chargeback ratio calculation, and then suddenly it was going to. RDR, including CDRN and so on. And then suddenly we saw that, so they were removed, and now what I've heard is that now RDR, CDRN, and Ethica are going to be dismissed when the chargeback ratio is calculated. This is not official, of course, and this is why maybe the time of the release of this might be important. But yeah, so the new Visa Acquire Monitoring Program may or may not include those numbers into the chargeback ratio calculation, and so there hasn't been any word from Visa in regards to, we understand what everything that's happening right now in the political landscape, what that might cause as an impact in regards to chargebacks. But I'm sure that they're aware of it. However, having said that, the grace period from when VAMP went basically live on the 1st of April until the end of October gives every merchant ample time to know how to react to this. So in the meantime, while everyone kind of adapts and learns on the new changes that are coming up, and as Visa also updates everyone on how that ratio is going to be calculated, then we have until October for that. And so if this whole tariff thing kind of blows all the way into October, I'd be surprised. And although it may not be that crazy to think about it, but I think that at that point, we should have enough information to know how to handle that. I think the best way to approach this, of course, is, step number one is to communicate with your clientele, with your buyers, communicate with your service providers, they will definitely have a better idea of how to address the situation. And then, of course, I think keep it cool, remain calm. Things are changing, and the best thing that you can do is just educate yourself. Learn about what your options are. Learn about what's the best way that you can strategize to move your business forward. Stay in tune with the news and talk with your service providers. They're normally the ones that will have the news like firsthand. And communicate with your buyers. I think that's always key.
Brought to you by the Reach Network. Visit withreach.com/network for more.